I'll speak to that, but Daniel can interject when I make mistakes. And Daniel's also here for question and answer time because he's the man on the ground. But what I'm going to do is, often when we talk about Cameroon, people say, "Where's that?" So I know I've got a far more educated audience here,
Yeah.
so that should not be a problem. Now, I'm hoping that I'm sharing a map with you. Am I?
You are.
Yes, you are.
See a map?
Yes.
Okay, so we're over here in Australia, and this is Cameroon in west of Africa. And then the capital of Cameroon is Yaoundé. If we blow that up a little bit further, the education centre that we'll be talking about is here in Fumbot. So Yaoundé's here. It's about a 5-hour drive between those two. And there's a hospital out here near Fumban. So that's just a quick orientation to the region of the world that we're talking about, just for those of you who weren't quite so sure. And then I'll just pull up my our presentation, and then we can start speaking to some of the slides just to give you some colour and movement. Now I'm hoping, can you see a PowerPoint presentation that says Essential Health for All?
Yep.
We can. We're seeing also the slides down the side as well. There you go. Now we're seeing
now you got the full page.
That's it. Cool.
Terrific.
Yep.
So this is an update of a presentation I possibly gave this audience, close to a year ago. And so the Essential Health for All Foundation, and so it's coming from Daniel and I, so I should have really acknowledged him on the front page, but it was an oversight. So our original purpose for this foundation was to provide affordable and sustainable health service delivery to regional Cameroon as a pilot project, but with the intention to expand the concept much further if deemed to be a sustainable model of healthcare delivery in Cameroon and elsewhere in Africa. So we know it's sustainable, but we'll get to that point in a moment. So introducing Daniel. So Daniel's the founder of the Cameroon Association of Critical Care Nurses. So he has a nursing background, highly skilled, highly competent, highly respected, not just in Cameroon, but throughout Africa and internationally now. He also helped form the African Federation of Critical Care Nurses, and he's their current president as well. And he had this vision of forming what has now become known as the Essential Health for All Foundation. So he's the founder and CEO, and he's also the founder of a sub-arm of this organisation, which is now called Essential Health Higher Institute, which we'll talk about further. And most of you know me, but I met Daniel through my work with the World Federation of Critical Care Nurses, and I've been visiting Africa since about 2006, supporting critical care nurses and doctors and other clinicians in Africa. And so Daniel and I formed a friendship since we first met in 2012. So I bet you can't work out which one I am. You got it. And that's Daniel. So that's Daniel and I, much younger.
In the middle.
And I was invited to speak at the first international conference of the Cameroon Association of Critical Care Nurses. So Daniel had this dream, this vision that he would love to build a health service in a rural part of Cameroon because he knew how much good it would do, and there are so many rural parts of Cameroon where this whole idea would be a great inclusion into the community. And so he set forth to identify a site and where our first hospital, our only hospital at the moment, was built. And so the health facility provides care, an urgent care centre like a mini emergency department, We have some inpatient beds and inpatient patients, and then we have outpatient services as well. The government provides our health service with some grants from time to time for special projects that they like us to do. So we're an NGO in that country. The vaccination program is one of those programs that we do get funding for, which is really important for the community. We have motorcycle access too, so some of our nurses can go out to the very remote communities and provide support to patients and see them in their communities. And we now have a committed staff group and a committed leadership group running that facility, and that's been running since August of 2022. There's just some images. Very soon after opening the hospital, it became oversubscribed. So many people trust this service. They trust the leadership who provide the health service. And so this is now their primary place for healthcare delivery in their community. So there's Daniel out the front just walking along between the buildings, and that's our logo that we've established for our organisation. So just in the first 12 months, we had about a bit over 3,000 ambulatory patients come in for consultations. You can see that the predominance is children under the age of 15, which is pretty common in developing countries like Cameroon. We've had just over 300 births in the first year. So that's been good as well, and we're continuing to provide those types of services, births, etc. These are the admissions overnight. So again, significantly children, but also, women sometimes have to stay after their birth if they've had any complications or whatever associated with having their baby. So we have this classification called consultation of poor and vulnerable patients. So we established a policy from the very start, and this was under Daniel's leadership and direction, which sort of suggests the sort of man he is in terms of his ethics. But we treat first and charge second, and there's a significant number of our patients who cannot afford treatment. They just don't have the means to pay for what it costs to treat them. So we manage that, and we try and make a little bit of extra on the patients who can afford to pay, so that the team can make discretionary decisions around those patients who can't pay after we've treated them. And that's not common in Africa, and indeed many third world countries. Many health services, because they know the people can't pay, they won't treat until they can pay. And so patients get a much worse outcome because of the delay in getting some of that essential treatment that they may need. So amongst the consultations, which is the ambulatory presentations, about 10% can't pay. And amongst those who are admitted to hospital, what's that? That's over 15% can't pay.
Mm.
The type of profile of patients that we get, you can see there. I won't read them all out. The highlight is malaria. This region is endemic for malaria, and so a lot of presentations are malaria-related presentations. But, we get traumas and diabetes and typhoid and all those other diseases that you can see there. So maternity care is a really important part of our care. Women die frequently and unnecessarily in low-resourced countries because they often don't have the means or the knowledge or just the wherewithal to manage their situation. And so having a hospital like this that can take in these women, particularly if they're at risk, first pregnancies or women who have had complications in previous pregnancies, if they now have health services close by, they'll stay close to us and they'll have their baby with us. So that's good. Our nurses and midwives provide postnatal care as well, do follow-ups. Sometimes I'll do follow-ups in the community. Sometimes the women will come to the health service for that care. And we also provide family planning advice and therapies if they wish not to get pregnant. So as we were moving through this journey and we discovered that the hospital was becoming oversubscribed, Daniel and the team sort of advised us that maybe we should get into the business of educating health professionals. And that would then secure us with a number of things. One is it would provide us with a pipeline of health professionals in the future as we try to expand these health services, the size that they are now, and also additional health services in other rural parts of Cameroon. Secondly, it provides a great service to people. It gives them a career opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have in the location where we've built our first educational institute. And thirdly, it is actually a source of revenue for us. So people will pay for an education, and we can make a small profit from that so that we can keep putting back into the facilities and the resources we need to keep these businesses going. So instead of building a bigger hospital, which was our first inclination when we were being oversubscribed, we decided to just run with the size of hospital we've got and build this teaching institute. So we have 4 lecture halls, a simulation lab, a library, a laboratory, and a couple of offices. And that was built over very quickly. We actually started in March and we completed the building pretty much by November of the same year. So again, Daniel was the overseer of this project. He got all locals in to make the bricks. So one of the smart things is trying to use local products to build these facilities and use local labour. And of course, we needed to find water, so a bore was put in, and we've got fresh flowing water to the health service now, to the education facility. And our electricity source is a generator, but that's far more reliable than the local electricity sources that we have available to us. But we do hope in the coming year or so we will get mains electricity put onto our building. But for the time being, the generator works exceptionally well, and it's quite an efficient source of power for us. So in November this year, we decided to launch this education facility. So the local community were invited. Daniel might correct me, but I think there must have been close to 600 people there, men, women and children, and a lot of community groups also came for that. I think I've got my slides in the wrong order. I'll have to go back to that slide. So we launched the facility. I mean, they're very kind. They've named this facility in my honour, which is a great honour. And they dressed me up as an honorary local chief to welcome me into the community and thank me and my colleagues who have been helping Daniel and his team with this project. The local community service groups, like the different unions and different women's groups and other community groups, all put on song and dance and entertainment to welcome us and to just celebrate the establishment of this service and this facility. That photo on the left is an absolute classic. So they're all the nursing students that have started in our program, and they all mobbed me and they all wanted to take selfies. So I'm the little Where's Wally in there. A few other happy snaps, some nice stories in amongst this one. So these are nursing students again, all very excited. One of the mothers, a couple of young girls who might join in the next couple of years. We had some food and everything. I want to just point out this photo. So I'm holding this little child. This is Daniel's youngest son, and his name is Jed. He was actually born on my birthday, so he's little Jed. Here's Daniel's wife. You can tell she's since that photo she has had their 6th child, a little girl. And she's also one of the senior nurses and midwives in the health service as well. So that slide I had a moment ago. After that was on our way to the launch, sorry. And so that just shows the distance between Uendi and Fumbot, and some of our colleagues from other parts of the world who came to join us and support the work we were doing. But we also ran a 2-day emergency critical care skills course at the Education Institute. Again, Daniel might want to correct me, but I think about 40 or 50 doctors and nurses and other health professionals participated in those programs, and we were supported by nurses and doctors from other parts of the world, some Western countries as well as other African countries, to help in that training program. So where does our Rotary Club fit into this story? Well, you've sort of followed my journey for a long time, but some of the and you've given me a lot of support, you know, particularly Ian and Heather, but many others as well. I shouldn't name names because then I'd have to name everybody. So I'll stop there. But many of you have been very supportive. And one of the great things you did for us was to help us organise this container full of medical and other supportive equipment, which has been exceptionally useful for us. So thank you again for that. It arrived in November 2023, and we were able to put it up on that platform. The imaging equipment, I think I saw Narelle on the line, is being used. So particularly the ultrasound is being used. I think in the first month we did close to 40 ultrasounds. So that's looking at pregnancies or masses in the abdomen, or you know, possible tumours or possible bleeding in parts of the body. It can be used for many things. And a technician comes up from Uendi to help train Daniel and his team. So we've got a train-the-trainer model. So over time they can do more of these tests on their own without the supervision of an external person. We also have the X-ray machine and the mammogram, which are being installed at the moment. Daniel can clarify whether they're actually installed yet, but I don't believe they are, but that is hopefully happening soon. There's so much other equipment, beds, trolleys, dressings, dressing trays, sphygmomanometers, and what else did you give us? You actually gave us some blood pressure machines as well. The middle picture is the container, and it's now a storage for some of the supplies that we got oodles of, which was great, and they can be stored there safely and pulled out as required. So that's become a very useful container for us to hold a lot of our equipment that we need. You've also funded through our club and through support from the foundation the blood analyser. So that costs about 10,000 Australian dollars, and Rotary collectively have provided 9,000 of those dollars, so that's exceptionally helpful. The blood analyser mainly does complete blood counts, so we can do red blood cell counts, white blood cell counts, hemoglobin, hematocrits and platelet counts. So they can diagnose anemia, leukemias and other blood disorders. If they've got bleeding problems, you know, they can get a pretty good diagnosis from the results of these tests, and then they can make a decision about, is this something they can manage locally in a regional centre, or is this something that really needs expertise? So get them off down to Uendi or Douala or one of the other big cities. So what next for our group? For the health service, we'd love to be able to expand the current services of the current hospital. So to be able to do more minor procedures, maybe more complex procedures, even small operations. So we would also like to have a central sterilising department and an expanded laboratory there. Staff and student accommodation. So if we could send students out there and staff from other areas, having accommodation on site would be really helpful. And then we'd also hope to maybe build some tutorial rooms and teaching labs out there, so it could become a bit of a teaching hospital and give people exposure to rural setting healthcare delivery. Daniel's overseeing some feasibility studies to see whether we could establish another primary care clinic at the Jed Williams Centre and or another primary healthcare centre in another town and start to expand this model. So those feasibility studies will be done this year, and then we'll look to see where and how we might be able to progress those ideas depending on resources and the other results from the feasibility study. On the other side, the education services that is now part of our portfolio, we have 30 first-year nursing students who commenced late last year. We also have some agriculture students. Now, I've missed a slide here somewhere. I didn't tell you this story, did I? I didn't show you this slide. I'm sorry.
No.
So what happened? Let me just take the story back just to tell you this, because this is really interesting. When we built the Essential Higher Health Institute, the education facility, and that's the title that the Ministry for Higher Education asked us to use, they came out to accredit us as a provider of education in the medical and biomedical sciences areas. So you can see all the courses that we thought we would be capable of teaching over time. And they agreed with all of that, tick, tick, tick. They were very happy. But they said to Daniel and the team when they came out, that's great if you teach that, but we also want you to teach agriculture and food sciences. And they're the subjects there in the dot points that you can see that they wanted us to teach. And the immediate response from our team was, well, we're health professionals. You know, we're not farmers, we're not agriculturalists, we're not entrepreneurs particularly, but you want us to do all this. And they basically said, we can see, and they were talking to Daniel, we can see that you are competent and capable and have a lot of strength behind you. And this is what the community needs. So they basically didn't beg us, but they basically, and I don't think they bribed us, but they basically said, if you're going to do healthcare, we want to do agriculture as well, and we'll tick you off for both. So we are now an agricultural education centre as well. But that's really smart and very strategic of them. And I think, you know, in hindsight, whether they bribed us or not, it was the right thing to do, because if we can also help our community develop strength in the ways in which they undertake agriculture, it's going to be much better for the community as well. You know, it's an essential part of their healthcare is having good food supplies. I talked about the analyzer. So just coming back to the education side of our portfolio, so that's what triggered me that I'd missed a page, was we have agricultural students as well. We've only got a small number at the moment. We do have a teacher. She has a master's degree in agriculture, and she has taught agriculture in Rwanda. So that's good. We are hoping this year that towards the end of this year, we'll be able to start a midwifery course, and that'll be really important for the community. We would really like to build a lecture hall and an accommodation facility on site where the education building is, for a number of reasons. The accommodation would be great for staff who have to travel and for students who have to travel from a long way, but it would also be a secondary source of income for us to help continue to reinvest back into the program. And the lecture hall would be fantastic. We would love to build a lecture hall that has a kitchen out the back, so that the kitchen could be used for providing food for staff and students, and again, be another source of revenue. It's probably another source of teaching, because we could probably teach some of our students to provide the food. But secondly, and then of course the lecture hall would be used for bigger events, bigger training programs, but it could also be used on the weekends for weddings, parties, anything, as a secondary source of income for us as well. So strategically, these two things are not only necessary for our facility, they also add an income source to us, which would be helpful. We are looking to see whether we might buy or hire another teaching facility so that we could expand these services to other parts of rural Cameroon. And the other thing we want to explore is sponsor a student program. And that's like the World Vision Sponsor a Child. And we're thinking that maybe we could profile our students on a site somewhere with Rotary, hint, and people or clubs might want to sponsor students as part of their way of contributing to the efforts in Cameroon. So that's been a great thought, but we haven't taken it anywhere yet. And the last one is we would love a second shipping container somewhere towards the end of 24. And the items I've highlighted there are the things where Rotary may be interested in considering whether they might want to support us in any of these. Just the fit out of the library and more textbooks. A few of my colleagues have said, can't do a lot for you, Jed, but I've got these textbooks that I probably don't use that much anymore. And so a few of my staff and colleagues are collecting some of their pre-loved medical textbooks. And in fact, agricultural textbooks would also be useful. And what we're hoping to do is start to collect them from around Australia, and we'll put them in the shipping container and send them over whenever that might be. So that's our story. Because I've been going to Africa a lot, I hear all sorts of great proverbs and things, and this is one of my favourites. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And in many African conferences, you'll see that proverb being used because that's how the people think. They realise the importance of working collectively to make a difference and to support each other. So that's the presentation.
Thank you very much, Jed. Has anybody got any questions for Jed? There's so much information there. Yes, Joan?
I don't really have a question. I'm just saying I am blown away by how much has been achieved in such a short space of time. Congratulations, Jed and Daniel and all the other people who have worked so hard to get that facility up and running. It's mind-boggling what can happen in a short time if people pull together. Yeah, so well done. And I hope that we can continue as a club and as Rotary overall to give you more help, give you more of the things the people over there need. So thank you for that presentation. Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you.
It was, Jed, and I think that too, that when you can come back and give us such a comprehensive presentation of, you know, where it's gone, what it's going to, what it's doing, how it's changing lives there, it actually makes people very excited to then see your hit list for the next 12 months and go, you know what, yeah, we can find something to help you. So yeah, good strategy. But Narelle has a comment or a question as well.
Thanks, Fran. Just a question for Daniel, I suppose. Are there any other health facilities around the location of the clinic that you've just built?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate. And before I go to detail that, there are other health facilities around, but not so close to that. And most of the people would prefer using that facility than others because of the quality, because of the concept, because of the approach. And we are really having a lot of people seeking the interest to use the facilities, and they are asking us to upgrade to have an operating theater and things like that. That is the comment we get from the patients.
Oh, we've lost him.
Yeah, Wi-Fi and internet is difficult in regional parts of Africa.
We might give Daniel a minute or so to see whether it resets. Did anybody else have a question? Oh, did you have another question, Narelle?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Jed, you were talking about textbooks. So does that mean there's actually no opportunity for internet learning?
There is, and that's a good question. I mean, Dr. Google's not bad, but you know, for some people, they prefer to sit and read a textbooks, and for some textbooks, the information doesn't change, like anatomy and physiology and some of those sort of subjects. Even some of the chemistry books don't date too much, particularly when you consider the types of medications that they have access to in this region. So they're not getting a lot of the first world new age treatments. It's usually a lot of the basics, which are still covered reasonably well in some of those textbooks.
Oh.
Thank you. I just wondered what opportunities there were.
Yeah, the really interesting thing about Africa is, despite the difficulties, you know, financially that people have, particularly the young people, most of them have mobile phones and iPhones, and you know they're on Facebook and they're on WhatsApp, and they're also accessing, you know, whatever free information they can get off the internet.
Jed, just on textbooks, have you got particular textbooks that you're looking for? Like, I mean, I have a lot of contacts in higher education, so does Prue, and there are ways that we can even put the word out to past students and things like that to say, hey, does anybody want to donate this? And, you know, tell them a story. I'm sure we'll get something, but are there particular things you're looking for?
Yeah, Daniel and I are in the process of trying to get a list together. So once we have that list, we'll share it with people. But it'll be mainly healthcare and agriculture. But in healthcare, it'll be nursing, midwifery, medicine, and then down to anaesthetics, emergency, obstetrics, etc. So the breadth is quite wide, but we want to have a little bit of all of those things. And again, a very interesting thing about Africa is that the scope of practice of nurses is quite large, much wider than nursing, say, in Australia. So, you know, Daniel and his colleagues do all the anaesthetising of patients because there just aren't anaesthetists in many of these places. You know, that they'll be the ones who have to intubate patients or form a tracheostomy in an emergency situation. So a lot of those textbooks that might be, you know, geared towards medical practice, it's still relevant in this context because sometimes they are the only providers in those situations. So we'll get that list together and we'll make it available hopefully in the next month.
Yeah, there's a couple of subscriptions that I have where, you know, post-secondary education and university, and, you know, to swap notes, to exchange textbooks and things like that. So I'm sure that I can put the word out on those sorts of things and just see what comes back. Yeah. So, Christina, you have a question.
Yes, I do. We saw a lot of young people in your photographs. Where are the older people, and do they access your health care?
So the young people in the photos were at the school, but there are other photos with a lot of the parents as well, but I mainly wanted to show the students. The hospital does see old people as well, but, you know, the numbers are disproportionately young people. But we do get old people as well. You know, we get people with all sorts of comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, not a lot of obesity, but then, you know, sometimes poor nutrition and the side effects of those sort of diseases.
Thank you.
I don't know what the average life expectancy is. I think Daniel's still having trouble getting on. But the life expectancy is quite low relative to our country as well. So, you know, there is a preponderance of young people in Africa, and older people tend to die young. So You don't see really old people very often.
Right. Bruce, you've got a question.
Yeah, I've actually got two, Jed. The first one is, how do you manage to get or how does Rotary get the shipping container from Australia into Cameroon? The reason I ask is I've had experience trying to get it into other countries, and it's not without its challenges. Is there a smooth path that is followed in this case?
I was a smart alligator on a ship. But
Yeah.
how do you get it past the port? We had major problems and we had to spend a lot of money. It ended up going to the wrong port. It took much, much longer than they said it would. And then we had to pay all sorts of inspection fees and whatever.
Bribes.
It was quite an there could have been some corruption involved. You know, we don't know, but it was particularly difficult. But what Daniel says to me is, it'll never be that hard again, because through this experience, he and I have learned, you know, how we would approach these things next time, so we don't have those roadblocks. But yeah,
terrific. No, I thought that might be the case.
Yeah,
it mirrors my experience.
I'll just answer that. One other comment though. What Daniel and I have really feel blessed almost by is these challenges, because each time we come across another challenge, we learn so much more. It's a bit like, you know, trying to find water, trying to build a cheap building and all this sort of stuff. Each time you have to be challenged by these things, you learn so much more about society and how to better interact and navigate it.
Sure. My second question is a bit left field. Does any Australian city have a sister city relationship with probably the capital of Cameroon at all? And the reason I ask is it's quite often a way to engender support from another section of the community. And a sister city relationship is something that could be explored if it exists. I suspect it probably does.
Not that I know of, but we do have a new board member joining our foundation, who is an Australian. He's a disability advocate. He wouldn't call them disabilities. He would call them, you know, some positive word, because he's one of those guys. But he's very interested in our project, and he does a lot of advocacy and the like. And he's exploring on our behalf what are the possible relationships between Australia and Africa, and Australia and Cameroon specifically. Haven't found anything strong yet, but we're still looking. Okay, there are some little community groups, African-based community groups in Australia. We've just got to find out what their interests are and whether they're interested in our project.
Yeah. There's I'm familiar with a small group at Emerald, who again supports an orphanage, and they basically sponsor it and run it from Emerald in Queensland into Africa.
Yeah.
And they've kicked some extraordinary goals, quite amazing. And it's the community in the central Queensland area that get behind them. They're not Rotarians, but when they go out, they get all sorts of donations and support for their cause. Yeah. Thank you.
Christina, can I just ask you, did you have another question, or was your hand still up? No?
Sorry, yeah, my hand's still up. I can't.
Oh, that's okay. Right, that's all right. So we'll go over to Bob, who has a question as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I hit it twice, but
that's all right.
Just on basically the economic climate over there with the government. Do you get any assistance at all from the Cameroon government with projects like that over there?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Very good question. We get some small grants. So the vaccination program in particular, they are funding us for that. They gave us a motorbike last year as well, so we could continue to expand our reach. For the education facility, I don't think we're getting any government funding for the teaching of the nursing students or agricultural students at the moment. We need to keep exploring some of those options. And one of the things we've done when I was there, we met with the equivalent of the governor and the mayor of the region, the regional officials. And they love what we're doing, and they have said to us that they are interested in working with us to see whether they can find sources of revenue for us. But it's an exceptionally poor country, and so if there's any inkling that we're capable of doing this without government support, they're going to let us keep doing it without government support.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jed.
Can I ask you, Jed, I noticed when you were pulling up your stats that, a big statistic that you treat is actually malaria.
Mm.
Is Rotarians Against Malaria, are they offering you anything? Or is there anything that they can do to help you?
It's a really good question. I haven't even explored that. Something we need to do.
Okay.
And if anyone, that's a great question actually. I mean, if anyone has a linkage, if you could just tell me,
We do.
email, we might do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Jed, I'll send you some info on it too. I've got a couple of contacts for Rotarians.
And I think Gerard Brennan from Hope Island Club is still fairly involved in that as well, and I see him quite regularly. But I'm just sort of thinking about things that we can tap into to help support you so that you can direct funds into building more and better. Does anybody else have any other questions of Jed at the moment? I have another one if you don't. Okay, I'll ask another one. Jed, how long are your students with you?
3 years, or a 3-year program.
Is that a nursing program?
Nursing program and the agricultural program. They're both diplomas in nursing, and the nursing and agriculture. And we run the national curriculum, so it's a prescribed curriculum.
Okay.
And when they come out of that, they're registered nurses, similar to our system in Australia.
Thank you, Narelle. Yep.
Got it. I just wanted to say that Gary came on before me, my guest, and I'm not sure if he got introduced, and I was remiss in not introducing him.
Well, I did welcome him, but you didn't introduce him, sorry.
Oh, no. Shame on me. So Gary is my brother-in-law, and he's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, a technician that works in radiology up here in Queensland. And so Gary's involvement was to help us get all the X-ray equipment that we sent in that shipping container, and plus lots of other stuff that he sent us. So I think I just wanted to acknowledge Gary and say thank you very much, Gary, for being involved.
Well
Thank
done.
you very much, Gary, on behalf
Gary.
of the Rotary of Nextgen, and I'm sure that Jed will have a word as well. But as you can see, what you've been able to do and what we've been able to send, and now you're seeing the results of it. So thank you so much.
It's an absolute game changer for this community. If you can get a quick diagnosis with some of this equipment, it just changes the whole trajectory as to whether you put them in a ute and get them down to a bigger hospital, or whether you work out that, no, you can manage this and it's going to be okay. And as I said, it's a game changer. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Bob.
Yeah, Jed, I had a look at the Rotarians Against Malaria, its website, and there is I think there's an opportunity there, because when they looked at it in the countries that they're dealing with, they're basically places like Papua New Guinea, Timor, Vanuatu, around in the Pacific area. So with those numbers that you have, I think that would be an excellent approach, because you've got the big numbers for malaria there, and just looking at the there they want people to contact them about any other areas. Yeah.
So the reason for that, Bob, is because they're doing research with the Bill Gates Foundation. That's why they concentrate around there. It is.
They've also
Yeah.
got
We
they've also got
we have a
their
form.
website about Sierra Leone as well.
We have a former member of our club who is heavily involved in the organisation, right? And I've just sent you his details. I've been chatting with him of late, so I know he will help, Jed. So I've just emailed you his contact details and who to get in contact with, and go from there.
Thanks, Peter. That's really helpful.
Yeah. Aren't
No
they
problem.
trialing? Aren't they trialing a vaccine at the moment in some of these places?
They are.
Yeah, that was the last that I read. They were doing vaccine trials to see if this multifaceted vaccine they've developed can get rid of the malarial parasite in all its forms, because some of you would know the parasite changes form in the body a couple of times before it changes back to what it was originally and gets taken up by another mosquito and handed on to someone else. And they're pretty sure they've made a multifaceted vaccine that will kill the parasite in any or all of its forms. So, and now they're doing trials with that vaccine. That was the last I heard. And that's all I know.
I can get us a guest speaker on that if you want, from PNG. They're actually doing the data collection and rollout.
Yeah, we'll pass that detail on to Pete.
Oh, I would love to hear that. Yeah.
I just had my contractor standing up in PNG, and one of the major research projects they do, what I'm working with is actually the malaria. So,
yeah. So Jed, it looks like they've got grants up to $2.5 grand US. It doesn't look like it's an overly stressful application process. They've got one of the active ones at the moment is End Malaria Now, which is in Colombia, because of it's a high risk area. So that might be worth pursuing as well.
Thank you. Great advice.
I'm just thinking about how we can weasel into other Rotarians. And like every Rotarian in Australia knows about the malaria project. So if we can sort of bait them with that and then talk about the other things that we need, we might be able to sort of, share the love a little bit more. Happy to work with you on that one if you like.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Jed? Not at this time. Do we have Daniel back? I can't see him.
He's there.
Yes.
Daniel, would you like to jump back on and continue the response to Narelle's question? She can ask it again to remind you if you like.
Yes, I think she was asking about if there was a nearby facility where the hospital is. And I said, yes, there are facilities, but not too close. There is a maximum and a minimum distance that has to be respected between facilities. So it is highly respected, but people are coming from far off distances to seek services in this facility because they appreciate the quality of the services that are being rendered. This is what I was saying. So I think our question is answered. And I was saying also that I appreciate the efforts of everyone. I cannot mention what each and every one of you has done so far, but it has pushed us to go very far and very quickly within a very short time. We look forward to collaborating with you as usual.
he's gone.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for us, just being able to see what you've been able to accomplish in such a short time, and be able to see, you know, I think as Rotarians, we're very giving by nature, but to actually see, you know, how it's being implemented in communities and get that feedback and get those updates is just phenomenal. So thank you so much, Jed, because that's the way that we can all get excited about, you know, knocking on doors, tapping on shoulders and digging into pockets to help you again.
Look, full credit to Daniel and his team. You know, I'm just the mentor, but you know, they're doing the on the ground stuff. And you know, there's a saying in our culture: necessity is the mother of invention. And every time there's a problem, and these guys are just nurses and other healthcare professionals and some teachers and whatever, but you know, they're building buildings and they're finding water and creating water systems and electrical systems and all the rest of it. And they're just thinking outside the box every time they can to try and do it in a cost-effective way. One of our ambitions is that if we can replicate this model a number of times in Cameroon and then maybe even outside of Cameroon and get some really good evaluation studies, and we're working on this in the background with some university students, we're hoping we will discover a way in which sustainable, really low-cost solutions can be just rolled out in low-resource countries. And this may sound grandiose, but you know, if we could take a case to the Gates Foundation or to the World Bank or to some of these other groups that have resources, they're always looking for innovative ways of improving humanity. We're hoping we might discover one of those solutions that we can share with those sort of people in the future. And it's not beyond us to do that. We've just got a few more years ahead of us.
I don't know, you're moving at the speed of light at the moment, so it might come quicker than you expect. You be ready with those presentations. Ricky and Kristen, do one of you have a question or a comment?
This is for you, Jed. Have you ever thought that was a beautiful presentation? Have you ever thought at all in a reverse presentation where you can show that a couple people in Australia in one afternoon and a few phone calls was able to achieve all that and actually present that to the government in Cameroon and around the world? Because considering that, Narelle's brother-in-law organised all that and it was an hour or so of packing a container, how much they actually achieved, and maybe present that to people outside Rotary of how much we can achieve with just a little bit of effort as a group.
Yeah, no, I haven't thought about that. One of my problems is I'm very time poor because I've got a full-time job as well and a few other projects. What I need to do is replicate myself and just find a few other people with a bit more time and a few more skills to be able to help do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I get angry when I see that we can achieve so much with just a little bit of effort, and we can do more than the whole government can do in a year type thing. Yeah, that's all. Just bringing to people's attention that just a little bit of care and help can go so far. Considering how far away we are, But congratulations, that was unbelievable. I did tear up for a little bit, so it was pretty good.
Thank you.
Vivian, I think Narelle was chuckling there because she was sort of thinking,